They said the Duke of Ravenscroft was only half a man, 4 years married, and no heir, and when his Duchess died, the whispers hardened into fact. He could not do what a husband does. Eliza Marsh took the position at Greyhurst because no one else would, and because her brother's debts would not pay themselves. She expected silence, cold corridors, and a master who never once looked at her. But the night she found him alone in the library, what the Duke confessed shattered every rumour in England and left her entirely undone. Before we begin, tell me in the comments what country you are watching from, and whether you love of it. I read every single one, and if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it means everything. Eliza Marsh walked the last 2 miles to Greyhurst Abbey, because the carter would not take his horse past the gate. He said the road was bad. The road was fine. Eliza had grown up on worse roads than that one, and she knew the sound of a man lying about mud. He wanted her boots on the ground, and his cart turned round before the light went, and he did not want to be seen driving a girl up to that house. So she took her bag and she walked. The moor came at her from both sides, brown and wet and endless, and the wind carried the smell of peat and cold stone. Somewhere behind her a curlew made its long falling cry. Eliza kept her chin down and her pace even. She had 11 shillings in her pocket, 1 change of linen in her bag, and a brother in Newcastle who owed £40 to men who broke fingers for less. That was the whole of it. Her father had died in March, and left them nothing but a name and a debt, and Tom had made the debt worse, trying to gamble it smaller. Eliza had gone to every respectable house within 30 miles. Every one of them had a girl already, or a cousin's girl coming, or a look on their face that said they had heard about the Marshes. Greyhurst had written back within 4 days. The wages were nearly double what a housemaid could expect. That should have told her something. The house came up out of the moor all at once, the way a ship comes out of fog. It was enormous, and it was grey, and half of it looked shut. Ivy had got into the east wing, and nobody had stopped it. There were more windows dark than lit. Eliza stood at the bottom of the drive, with her bag in both hands, and thought, quite clearly, that a house this size ought to have more smoke coming out of it. The housekeeper's name was Mrs. Pell, and she had a face like a closed ledger. "You walked," she said. "I did. The carter wouldn't bring you." "No." Mrs. Pell nodded once, as though something had been settled. She led Eliza through a passage that smelled of stone and lamp oil, past a kitchen where 2 women stopped talking the moment the door opened, and up a back stair that turned 4 times. "You'll do the west corridor, the library, and the morning room," Mrs. Pell said. "You'll be up at 5. His Grace takes breakfast at 8, and he takes it alone. You do not speak to him unless he speaks first. You do not go into the east wing at all." "Yes, Mrs. Pell. The last 3 girls left inside a month." Eliza set her bag down at the foot of a narrow iron bed. "Did he give them cause?" Mrs. Pell was quiet long enough that Eliza turned round to look at her. "No," the housekeeper said. "The village gave them cause. There's a difference, and you'd do well to learn it early." She left. Eliza sat down on the bed and listened to the wind find its way through the window frame, and she thought about £40, and she unpacked her linen. She had heard the rumour, of course. Everybody in Northumberland had heard the rumour. Nathaniel Vane, 7th Duke of Ravenscroft, had married Lady Cassandra Ainsley in a cathedral with 600 people watching. 4 years later she was dead of a fever in Italy, and there was no child, and there had never been any sign of one. And somewhere in those 4 years, a story had got out and settled over the man like a wet blanket, and it had never come off. They said he could not. They said whatever it is that makes a husband had been left out of him. They said Lady Cassandra had wept about it to her sister, and her sister had wept about it to half of London, and by the time she was buried it was not a rumour any more. It was simply a fact that everybody knew, the way everybody knows the sea is salt. Eliza's own aunt had said it at the kitchen table without lowering her voice. Poor creature, all that land and no use for it. She had not thought much about it then. It was somebody else's misfortune, and she had enough of her own. She met him on the 4th morning, and she had been told he would not look at her, and that turned out to be entirely wrong. She was on her knees at the library grate with the ash pail beside her, when the door opened. She had been assured he never came in before 10. She froze with the brush in her hand, and then she did the only thing there was to do, which was stand up and press herself back against the bookshelves and look at the floor. "You're new." His voice was lower than she expected, and rougher, like something that did not get used often. "Yes, Your Grace. What's your name?" "Eliza Marsh, Your Grace." There was a pause. She could hear him move further into the room, and then the sound of a chair taking his weight. "Look up, Miss Marsh." She looked up. He was not what the stories had built. She had been carrying around some vague idea of a soft, faded, drooping sort of man, a man made of apology. What sat in the chair by the window was tall and broad through the shoulder, and about 35, with black hair badly cut, and a jaw that had not seen a razor in 2 days. His shirt was open at the throat. There was ink on the side of his hand. He looked tired, in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. "You walked from the crossroads," he said. "Yes, Your Grace. In March. It wasn't so bad. It was 7 miles and it was raining." He turned a page of the ledger in front of him without looking at it. "Mrs. Pell will arrange the cart next time. There will be a next time. Girls do not stay here." He said it flatly, the way a man states the weather. Eliza should have said, "Yes, Your Grace," and taken her pail and gone. She had been in service 4 days. "Why don't they?" she said. His head came up. She had gone too far, and she knew it, and she stood there with her hands full of ash brush, and waited to be dismissed. And the Duke of Ravenscroft looked at her for a long moment, with an expression she could not read at all. "Because their mothers write to them," he said. Then he went back to his ledger, and she took her pail, and that was the whole of the first conversation she ever had with him. She said something at supper on the Tuesday that she did not mean to say. The servants' hall was warm and crowded, and Nan Bewley, who did the upstairs linen and had a mouth on her like a torn sack, was doing the voice. She did it most weeks. Everyone knew the voice. It was meant to be his. And then he says, "Madam, I regret I am indisposed." And the table went up, and Nan spread her hands and rolled her eyes back. "Indisposed, if you take my meaning." Eliza put her cup down harder than she meant to. "He paid for your mother's coffin." The laughing did not stop all at once. It came apart in pieces, one and then another, until it was only Nan with her hands still up in the air, and her face going slowly red. That's nothing to do with, you told me yourself. On my 2nd day. You said the estate paid it, and never sent a bill." Eliza heard her own voice, and it was flatter and colder than she had ever heard it. "So he's a man who buries your mother, and asks nothing for it, and you sit here and do a voice about what he can't do in his own bed, for men who'd let your mother go in the parish pit. Nobody said anything. Eat your supper," said Mrs. Pell from the end of the table, without looking up. They ate their supper. Eliza went up to her room afterwards with her ears burning, and could not think of one good reason why she had done it. She did not know the man. He was a duke, and she was the girl who did his grates. She had made an enemy of Nan Bewley for the sake of somebody who would not have known her name a week ago. Pride, she told herself, lying in the dark. You were defending your own good sense, not him. You took the position. You'd look a fool if the position were as bad as they say. It was a reasonable explanation, and she did not believe a word of it. The parcel was on her bed on the Friday. Brown paper, string, no card. Inside was a pair of boots. Not new. Good, though. Better than good. The leather soft and worked, and the soles thick enough for stone. They were her size, or near enough that somebody had asked. Underneath them, folded, was a wool shawl the color of dark moss. There was one line on a scrap of paper in a hard, slanting hand. The East Road floods until May. Our Eliza sat down on the bed and held the boots in her lap for rather a long time. She had said one sentence about walking, once, 4 days into her service, in a room she had not been supposed to be in. He had been reading a ledger. He had not appeared to be listening at all. It meant nothing. He was a rich man, and boots were nothing to him, and she was a servant, and this was what decent masters did. She put them on anyway. They fitted, and she stood there in the middle of her cold little room in a dead woman's house, in a pair of boots that a man everybody in England laughed at had thought to buy her, and Eliza Marsh felt the first crack go through something she had spent 23 years building. April came late to the moor that year, but it came. The house changed with it. Shutters that had been closed since Eliza arrived were folded back, and the light got into rooms that had been holding their breath for 4 years. Mrs. Pell had the carpets out on the line. 2 men came from the village to cut back the ivy on the east wing, and nobody stopped them, and that was apparently a thing worth remarking on, because the kitchen talked of nothing else for 2 days. Eliza was moved off the grates and onto the library. She did not ask why. Mrs. Pell delivered it the way she delivered everything, as a fact that had arrived from somewhere else. You'll do the books. Dust, don't tidy. He knows where things are, and he'll know if you've moved them. So Eliza did the books. He worked there most of the day. She had expected that to be unbearable, and it was not. He did not talk at her, and he did not ignore her either. Sometimes an hour would go by with nothing in the room but the fire and the scratch of his pen, and then he would say something, apropos of nothing, in that low, rusted voice. The Ainsley portrait is crooked. It's the wall, Your Grace. The wall's gone. Is it? A pause. Then leave it crooked. It suits her. Eliza did not know what to make of that, so she made nothing of it, and went on with the shelves. Mr. Sowerby arrived on the 12th of April, with 2 trunks and a letter of introduction, on behalf of Lord Gideon Vane, to review the condition of the estate. Eliza learned 3 things about Lord Gideon in the space of one supper. He was the Duke's cousin. He had not set foot in Greyhurst since the funeral, and if his Grace died without a son, every stone of it went to him. Every stone, said Nan Bewley, with her chin on her hand, and for once nobody at the table laughed. Sowerby himself was a smooth, pink, pleasant man who said good morning to the servants and asked their names and remembered them. Eliza distrusted him inside a day, and could not have told anyone why. On the 4th night she found out why. She was coming down the west corridor with an armful of linen, when he stepped out of the door of the blue room, and he said, "Miss Marsh," in that pleasant way, and he put his hand on her waist. It was not violent. That was somehow the worst of it. It was casual, the way a man takes a glass off a tray. "You're wasted up here," he said. "Lord Gideon keeps a good house. You'd not be carrying sheets." Eliza stood entirely still. She had 11 shillings, and a brother in Newcastle, and this man wrote reports to the man who would own this house one day, and every one of those facts was in the room with her. "Take your hand off me," she said. He laughed, and did not. She never found out what she would have done next, because a door opened at the end of the corridor. Sowerby's hand came away so fast it was almost comic. The Duke of Ravenscroft came up that corridor without hurrying, and he did not raise his voice, and afterwards, Eliza could not remember him saying anything to Sowerby at all. He simply arrived, and stood, and looked, and the pink man began talking very quickly about having lost his way to the stair. "The stair is behind you," Nathaniel said. Sowerby went. Then there was only the corridor and the linen, and the 2 of them, and Eliza discovered that her hands had started shaking, now that it was over, which struck her as poor timing. "He'll be gone in the morning," Nathaniel said. "Your Grace, before breakfast. He writes to your cousin." Eliza got the words out steadily enough. "If you send him off, he'll write that too. He'll write it his own way." "Yes. Then don't. Not for me." She hitched the linen higher against her chest. "I'll keep out of his road. It's 4 more days." And here was the strange thing, the thing she turned over for weeks afterwards. He did not tell her she was being foolish. He did not say, "Leave it to me," which is what men said, in her experience, immediately before doing whatever they had already decided to do. He said, "What do you want done?" Eliza looked at him. "I mean it," he said. "It happened to you, not to me. Tell me what you want and I will do that thing and nothing else. If you want him gone tonight, he is gone tonight, and Gideon can write what he likes about it. If you want him left alone, I will leave him alone, and you will not be in a corridor by yourself again while he is under this roof. Either is easy. I am only not going to choose it for you." The corridor was very quiet. Nobody had ever asked her that. Not once, not about anything, in 23 years. Her father had not asked. The men who came about Tom's debts had certainly not asked. The world put its hand on you, and then told you afterwards what had been decided. "Gone tonight," Eliza said. Sowerby was gone in an hour. The storm came on the last night of April, and it came off the sea, and it hit the west face of the house like something with a grievance. Eliza could not sleep in it. Nobody could. At 2 in the morning she gave up and went down for the candle she had left in the library, and found the door open, and the fire still going, and the Duke of Ravenscroft sitting in front of it, with a glass in his hand, that he had not drunk from. He did not look round. "Miss Marsh, I'll come back in the morning, Your Grace. Stay a moment." She stayed. He turned the glass slowly in his fingers, and watched the fire, and the rain went over the windows in sheets, and Eliza stood by the door with her shawl over her nightdress, and waited. "They put your wages at double," he said at last. "Did you ever wonder why?" And there it was. Eliza